So anyway, I'm Mike Flockenhaus. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at STEADYSERV Technologies. STEADYSERV has been in the press recently, and if you have any questions about that, you're more than welcome to ask at the end. However, I'm not going to address it here. All right, just wanted to get that little caveat out there. STEADYSERV is a company that manages beer inventory and data. But I'm going to stick to the beer inventory side of things for the time being, because that's where we do the that's where our IoT ecosystem really kind of fits in, if you will. I'll talk about some of the other pieces at the very end. I'm just going to touch upon them. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to go into all sorts of Python code. I'm a little bit closed booked about that. I don't like to share quite frankly, some intellectual property secrets that have gotten us to this point over these many years. STEADYSERV has been around since about 2012. The concept was born by Steve Hirschberger. He was a brewer at Flat 12 Beer Works. We have done all sorts of different things over the many years up until about 2018, 2019, where we've kind of standardized our product line and the service offerings that we have. A couple of things to note. Back in 2014, we purchased a company called Pint Labs. 3 guys out of Raleigh, North Carolina. They had a beer database. It's called BreweryDB. You can check it out online. It's brewerydb.com. We actually we offer API access into that beer database to the outside world, as well as, quite frankly, we eat our own dog food by using that brewery database to put things together for our different service offerings. Back when I got here in 2013, our entire engineering organization was outsourced. All right, we had a hardware company that developed the scales, and I'll get to those in a minute. And we also had a group of offshore development where we did all of our back-end development. All right. Let's see, a couple of other notes along the lines. I'll talk more about it, but back in 2016, we launched something called Matching in the App. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then all sorts of different product offerings along the way. We did data analytics on POS sales, which we call sales analytics and product performance. We can tell retailers what's going on in that regard. And then we also developed what we call Forecast and Forecast TV. Forecast is essentially the ability to put your beer menu up on a digital menu. All right, we do it very inexpensively. We were really kind of keen back then on the whole Google Chromecast. It was a very inexpensive way to get into the market for us. However, Google did us a great favor by deprecating their API, and so we needed to go to the Chrome bit. A little bit more expensive, but still utilizes that same concept of casting a menu. We just ended up on different hardware. All right. A little bit about myself. I graduated from the University of Toledo back in 1986. So I've been around a while. I moved to Chicago and I went to work for US Robotics. I developed modems. I was a DSP engineer and I did all the different noises, algorithms, everything you did with modems. I then moved into our networking systems division and did a lot of things with ISPs. Back in those days, ISP was the big thing. You didn't have just one like Comcast and those guys today. I relocated to Indianapolis back in 2001 and went to work for Eschen Technologies. Eschen Technologies was Scott Jones's company. All right. We were sold to D&M Holdings back in 2003, a couple years after I got here. D&M is the group that does all Denon and Marantz audio and video equipment. All right. I managed an advanced center for technologies where we actually licensed our technology. Back when Escient was bought, we also bought Replay TV and Rio Media Player Company. Replay TV was the rival to TiVo back in the day. They ended up in a big lawsuit about skipping over commercials. So anyway, that didn't quite go over so well. We did products for the PC. And then basically a few years later, I joined STEADYSERV. All right, if you have any questions, just jump in, but I wanted to give you a little bit of background so you understood who was standing in front of you today and what they were talking about. So it doesn't like that slide. Oh, there it goes. So how does STEADYSERV do IoT? All right, so IoT is essentially arranged around the smart scale. This scale has actually got a microprocessor inside of it. We developed the mechanicals around this. It's battery operated. It has RFID technology, which I'll get to in a minute. And it is basically 4 load cells that are positioned around here, around the scale. And as you set the keg on it, it's been designed to handle half barrels, which kind of drape over the side, and then the smaller barrels, which are used in more craft beer applications these days. They're called 6 stoles or 6 barrels. They actually fit right inside of the ring and put the pressure on. They're very rugged. They can handle up to 350 pounds. I like to say you can throw it across the street like a Frisbee, and it'll still operate. Very rugged. Coolers, walk-in beer coolers have a high humidity content, all right? And all of these electronics are protected by the fact that we have gaskets around all the different pieces that we need to in order to prevent that moisture from getting into the electronics, right? Because after that, water and electricity don't play well together. So anyway, we'll talk more about the scale in a moment. But the whole idea here is that we have smart scales, we have RFID tags, the gateways. We have all sorts of different models of gateways. We use an off-the-shelf gateway. It's made by Digi. This is where the Python code runs. I'll talk a little bit more about data science and Python in a little while. However, the predominant amount of code that we do with Python runs inside these Digi gateways. We support 2 different models. You're wondering, why do you support 2 different models? Actually, as it turns out, we support a Wi-Fi model. And the Wi-Fi model, obviously, like it sounds, jumps on the local Wi-Fi and sends the data up to the cloud. All right, we use an AWS backend. And it's a microservice architecture that's there. We also support a cellular gateway. All right, this is for establishments that don't want us riding on their network. All right, these devices connect into a cellular connection, and then at that point we actually VPN up to our cloud. And the reason is because we don't want that data going free and clear. We use a VPN in order to be able to send small chunks in what we call through a socket. All right, data in the clear. We don't encrypt it. We don't do anything else like that. We send it over that VPN socket because in the end, when you're working on a cellular network, you still have to pay for the data that you send across it. And in the end, the aggregators, you have to go on Verizon, you have to go on AT&T, Sprint, etc. And in order to send that data across, you have to pay to do so. STEADYSERV takes on that cost. It's buried in the cost of the product as that we sell as a service. All right. This is our ecosystem, all the way from the scales, sending information to the gateways. The gateways then pump that information up to our infrastructure. We also ingest POS data from the establishment's POS system. I'll talk about that later. And then we also do things with external data feeds. and then we push that information down into a browser interface or down to your phone. Here is where you can turn around, manage your draft status. You can take a look at what's happening inside your cooler. I know that we call these things smart scales, but they actually are pretty smart. A little bit more in terms of IoT and management of the device. There are all sorts of different things that we do, but because these guys, for example, run on a battery, the kegs will tend to deplete. Right now, the scales wake up every 10 minutes, and they send their weight reading to the gateway, and then the gateway basically funnels all that information up to the cloud. All right? They are really smart. And the reason why they are really smart is because as the keg depletes and it gets below 45 pounds, they'll actually wake up more frequently, all right? As the keg falls below 35 pounds and 25 pounds, they'll wake up even more. So we ratchet up the reporting period from every 10 minutes to 5 minutes to 3 minutes to every 1 minute. And the reason is that because we can accurately tell the establishment, either through a notification or an email or a text, hey, your keg is about to blow, send Johnny into the back room in order to change it, right? Because if he's back there after the fact, you're not selling beer out of that tap for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. On a busy Friday night, he might not get back there for another half hour. You lost all that business. And when you can turn around and accurately tell a bartender that his keg is about to blow, he's going to earn more in tips as well. So we're actually working through to help the entire establishment, not only from the owner, but all the way down to the bartender. All right, we talk a little bit more about smarts. We haven't implemented this, but we're actually getting ready to. Based upon the keg that you put on the scale, we can actually determine up in the cloud what's going on in terms of a half barrel, quarter barrel, or even that sixtel, right? That sixth barrel. And what we do is we can actually push messages down into the gateway, and the gateway can separately address these guys throughout the entire cooler to say, hey, you don't have a half barrel on your back anymore, you have a sixtel on your back. So therefore now the weights aren't 45 and 35, they're a little bit lower, because what we're trying to do is improve battery life and turn around and say, okay, it's 35, 25, and 15, all right, because the weights vary. So some of the device management that we are referring to and what we do is we can actually address each of these guys individually, or we can address the gateway individually as well up from our cloud. I'll talk a little bit more later about some of the other things we can do, like we can push firmware updates to these guys. We can tell all sorts of different things to do with this from an individual perspective. So, technology that we use in here, we use the Zigbee protocol. We don't use it in a mesh fashion. You may have heard about Zigbee. Zigbee is actually a home automation protocol, all right? We've actually augmented Zigbee for our own purposes. We don't use it in a mesh scenario, and that's because I said these guys wake up every 10 minutes. If they're not awake, they can't do the hop in the mesh. So therefore, what we've done is we've augmented the Zigbee protocol to be star to spoke, all right? This is the star and this is the spoke. So the gateway is always central to everything, and then the scales are a spoke to the gateway. The gateways can handle up to 80 scales. We do have some establishments that have over 160 taps. So we have a couple of gateways in there. What we do with that is Zigbee is also on a what we call the channel protocol, and we can actually modify the channel inside these that they speak to. So what we can do is we can have channel 25, which is a default Zigbee channel. They talk to 80 scales, and then we can also modify it to be on channel 22. And then this guy gets programmed to channel 22 and the other 80 are there. So we can actually not have crosstalk. The other reason why we chose Zigbee is it goes through a brick wall. All right, it's a 900 megahertz type protocol. It can go through a brick wall. A lot of coolers are made out of metal. And so therefore, you need to be able to get over that barrier from a wireless perspective. All right. Any questions so far? I hope I'm not going too fast. I got a ways to go, but we have a question on the what is the connection protocol between the scale and the gateway? I just answered that.
What's the battery life like?
Right now, the battery life is around 4 months. We've actually gotten, since you asked about battery life, we actually also do something with the gateways where we can push down data sets for Monday through Sunday, where this guy can turn around and tell these guys hours of operation. And what we do is so if the bar closes at 11 p.m. or it closes at 1 a.m. and opens back up at 3, well, you don't want them waking up to every 10 minutes to tell you what the hell the reading is, right? Or maybe there's less than 10% left in the keg, and now all of a sudden this guy's running at every 1 minute or every 3 minutes, and over that time period he wakes up, he's using battery power. So what we do is we have an hours of operation. You can set it Monday through Sunday. Those are the normal work weeks, but we can change to anything that you want in terms of a work week. But the whole idea is this guy can turn around and tell these scales exactly what's going on from an hours of operation standpoint. We gap that, then the scales start waking up an hour before the place opens and an hour after. Some places don't want hours of operation, and I'll show you a classic example of why. The cleaning crew came in at 3 a.m. and basically nobody was looking, and they opened up the tap handle a couple of times, and now all of a sudden they're depleting the keg, and quite frankly, they're stealing from the establishment at that point. So some establishments don't even want hours of operation in that regard. Okay, let's keep going. So see, these are some of the interfaces. Like I said, the applications, we have an iOS, we support Android, and we support web. All right, we can give system statuses, draft statuses. We have reporting tools. We call it Kegonomics. Yes, we do have a marketing department, and they're doing their job. Along all of these pieces, we do sales analytics, product performance, days on tap, and waste and yield. You might be asking, what's waste and yield? So what we do is that for every depletion that comes off the keg, you should be seeing a sale rung up in POS. If that becomes off kilter, then what ends up happening is you end up wasting more beer than you're making money on. We've actually proven that if people reduce their waste by even 25%, they can put more money in their pocket in terms of north of 33% more revenue for their establishment. So we have a very compelling story to tell the retailer there. We also have the ability to do profile administration. So you as an individual can be the bartender, you can be the GM, you can even be the franchise owner and be able to see all of your locations at the same time. All right. This is a draft status page. You can see how much is left in each keg. We give even the keg level in here, all right? Part of our beer database is coming through now where we're talking about all of the different products that we have. We even have the color of the beer in there from an SRM perspective. Here we can talk about more information about all the metadata associated with a particular product. So not only the brewer and the product that he's brewed, we talk about ABV, alcohol by volume, IBU, international bitterness units. We'll even tell you down to the serving glass size, serving glass type, and the temperature that you should be serving the beer at. Depends on that. A little bit more about the beer database. Back when we purchased Pint Labs, we had roughly 30,000, 32,000 beers in the beer database. Today we have north of 90,000. We hand curate the database ourselves. People can submit things. Brewers can take ownership of their brewery within BreweryDB. We do this for a very exacting reason, is because we don't want any expletives in the beer database. We control it very closely because we don't want that information showing up here within the UI, and you can probably imagine we certainly don't want it showing up on a digital menu because some of that information is there as well. So we hand curate everything that we do there. Here is an example of how we monitor inventory. This is an establishment that we have right now. As I talked about before with the RFID tags, I'm going to go back there for a moment, and what we call matching in the app. All right, so back in the day, we had RFID tags, and what we did was we actually programmed the RFID tag with the brewery, the product, and the keg size. It became very cumbersome for us. One of the big deals was we had to ship tags overnight based upon the delivery that was coming in the next day, so that when those kegs came into the cooler, you had to tag them. All right? We changed out to being what we call a tag number or a tap number. You can sort these in any manner, but the whole idea now is what we do is we number the taps in any cooler from 1 to whatever. All right? It just so happens that this establishment has 12 kegs on tap. And what you do is that when you're at the very beginning of doing an installation with us, I hate name tags, we'll drop that. You pair the tag to the scale, press the red button, and you pair it, and now you take this tag and you put it on the keg coupler, and the numbers match so that Johnny knows when tap number 3 is blown or about to blow, that scale number 5 should be under tag number 5. Sorry. So anyway, that is the reason why these numbers match all the time. My example doesn't match, but you get the idea. All right. So again, matching in the app was a big deal because now GMs don't need to be in the cooler right away. We can also do things like, they don't have any, but we can also lock a tag. All right, so what that means is that every time that you put on for Love and Gold on tag number 3, you can lock it to that product, such that every time you take the keg off and you put a new one on, we turn around and send you a notification or a text saying, hey, we noticed that you put on Love and Gold on tag number 3. And that way, it just stays that way. If the tags aren't locked, you will get something like this. Hey, we noticed you took the previous keg off and put a new keg on. It's awaiting a match. You press that button on the web interface or on your phone, and then what we do is we start to give you the ability to tell us what the product is and what the vessel size is. That's all we need. As you start typing characters, we'll shrink the list on you and turn around and give you a shortened list so you can pick the product out faster. All right? Let's see. And that actually pushed us in quite a different direction because now we didn't have to ship out tags every night before. Saved us a lot of money. We also do things with battery. We'll turn around and tell you that your battery is getting low. You need to change it out. You have actually, once this turns yellow, you have about 2 weeks to change the battery out. Otherwise, we'll put it into a dead state and you won't get any more information out of it. All right? Let's see. Here's this classic case in point. So what do we do with some of the data that we get? All right? Here you can turn around and you can take a look at what's happening to the lifetime of the keg. It's kind of moving a little bit slowly, right? So in this particular case, we'll give you more metrics behind what's actually going on behind the product. All right? We can give you an approximate projected empty date for that keg. we tell you how much that you actually sell in a day. We can tell you how long it's obviously been on tap and obviously how many ounces it's poured. Some of these pieces of information right here start to tell a retailer what's not working for him and what's working for him or her.
Was that 3 a.m. the cleaning crew?
What's that?
Was that the cleaning crew right there?
Yes. So, so here you can see the hours of popularity behind this product. You can tell that they bought a few at lunchtime, but as you started to hit the 4 and 5 and 6 o'clock hour, that's when you started to peak, and you probably got a little bit more at last call. But here is what I was talking about when they don't want hours of operation. The cleaning crew came in at 2:30 and started depleting the keg. And that's why a lot of establishments don't want their hours of operation set for a particular location. We turn around and, yes, that shortens the battery life, but on the other hand, gives them that benefit. So they're the ones that get to choose. But yeah, that's exactly what I was wanting to point out was there's the cleaning crew who is cheating on them. The other interesting thing that we can do is a lot of places need to clear their beer lines. Cleaning wastes a lot of beer because they need to run water through with a particular salt concentration and things like that. Don't want to get into that too much. But the whole point is that you can also see when they come in early in the morning, a lot of places will turn around and hire their distributor to clean beer lines. They'll come in at the 6, 7, 8 a.m. hour, and then all of a sudden you'll see a spike. Well, we allow them to also look at the different spikes along those time frames. And you'd be amazed at how many distributors come in and clear beer lines. And the more beer they waste here is usually found on the more expensive products that they buy, interestingly enough. So just some information that we give retailers to say, Sam came in to clean your beer lines today, and he took that craft or that, expensive product from Three Floyds that's very rare, like Dark Lord or something like that, right? And all of a sudden, he spiked at 8 a.m. Well, maybe he went off to answer his girlfriend on his text message or something like that, didn't pay attention, and the beer ran through the line and he wasted it all. Now we're able to give retailers the ability to actually say, you know what? I want an SLA with the distributor if I'm going to sit here and sign him up to clean his beer line. So, like I said, I wasn't going to go into a lot of Python code, but kind of interesting application from the entire standpoint. All right, some of the reporting that we do just from a monitoring standpoint. We can turn around and tell you the product and how long it's been on tap. We had some people keep products on for more than 60 days, and then they wonder why they don't run out or why it's still on tap. The freshness is in the toilet. Right? So you can actually set thresholds against these as well. So maybe you don't want a keg on longer than 14 days. You can be notified through the app, hey, you just hit the threshold. You should probably start to think about putting this product on special, or you need to swap it out, sell it back to your distributor, whatever it is that you can do. It's amazing also all the different rules that you have from state to state to state to state. Here in Indiana, you can actually give a keg back to the distributor, and he has to give you a credit for the product that's left in. You'd be amazed at how the truck driver turns around and says, yeah, I think that's 20%, or maybe it's 10%. Well, now we can turn around and tell him exactly how much is left. We can actually, with the load cells and all the rest, we can be accurate to within 2%. All right. Some significant improvements, like I talked about before, we're always trying to improve our battery life. It is a special battery, even though it looks like a AA. It has a little pigtail on it and requires the main reason why it requires a special battery is because maybe not everyone knows, but cold kills batteries, right? It's exactly why Duralast and Craftsman and all those guys exist because they figured out how to make battery cells that can survive the cold. Back in the day, cold cranking amps, right? Minnesota didn't do very well. But the whole fact of the matter is that these guys are in a cooled environment, right? If you're at Twin Peaks, they like to keep their coolers at 29 degrees. Other places keep them a little bit warmer, but again, cold kills batteries. So we always strive to improve our battery life. Matching in the app took us quite a bit. And then we actually have a POS client that we've developed from scratch as a native .NET Windows application. This actually also fits a little bit in the IoT space because when that client sits on the back of house server on the POS system, it needs to be managed as well. We can do updates. We can tell it that, hey, the system didn't produce Thursday from last week. We can turn around from our back end and say, okay, guess what? We didn't get POS data from Thursday last week. Go get it. Go get it and bring it in. All right? And we can do that all in an automated fashion. So it's a little bit, it's not exactly an IoT device, but it acts like an IoT device. All right? Pint Labs and Pint Labs administration. I'm going to get into this now. I'm going to flip over from the presentation, but this is where we administer the entire brewery database, and this is where we also provide our back-end support system. All right, and again, ability to manage our POS systems. So let me do this. Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't paying attention to that. I'll start from the top. What resolution does a scale provide? Can you tell if a single glass is poured from a keg? Yes, we can. We can go to the pound, and so which is roughly a pint glass, 16 ounces. I hope that answers your question. There are ways to get to tenths of a pound in our scales. We haven't gone there yet. So as we perfect our process, we can actually get more granular if we want to. We're kind of keeping ourselves, though, at that level for the moment. And what is the expected lifetime of a scale to look? So far, we have had scales not operate for us. They've gotten out of spec. Right now, we expect the lifetime of a scale to be about 3 years. There's an infant mortality rate. Just so everyone understands, we have roughly 7,000 scales deployed in the field right now across roughly 250 gateways across the world. And I'm talking about across the world. We have done some experiments with some folks in India from Accenture and Genpact and Capgemini doing resale for us, all the way into Europe where I don't know how many of you are familiar with Three Floyds, but they do a lot of collaboration with a group called McKellar. McKellar is based out of Denmark, and we are in their brew pubs across Europe, and we're getting ready to migrate to some of their brew pubs here in the States. McKellar does some things with Citi Field in New York. We also do stadiums. We've been in the Philadelphia Phillies Citibank Park. We've been in there with them and Aramark all the way out to the West Coast. But we have a European presence as well in that regard. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about this part. And, oh, good, I did mirror it. Oh, I'm sorry, is the Brewery DB the same one used by Untapped? No, Untapped has their own brewery database. We do that for a reason, and that is that they may claim, so this is obviously biased, but they may claim that they are definitely the world's largest used database. However, they have a lot of duplicates, and their information is different. All right, from the same Bud Light to the same Bud Light, they'll have the different ABV, IBU, all that sort of thing. The other thing behind Untapped is they allow their users to crowdsource their information. So back to the whole expletives, hey, this product was great. We don't want that, because that will show up when you turn around and access their information later. I am going to try to make this bigger so everybody can read it. So this is PLA. All right. We have an overall system status. We look at sensors. We look at the batteries. We look at the gateways. This is a snapshot from a long time ago. Please note that not all these 70 gateways that haven't checked in are real customers. These are some of those taps and bars. We call them bars, but they're actually like the Accenture or the Genpact or the Capgemini that have gone offline and have not been disabled by us. All right? So what I would like to do now is to talk a little bit more about how we do some device management. So this happens to be 23rd and Main in Richmond, Virginia. You can see that all their sensors have checked in, they have good batteries, and their gateways are checked in. Over to the side here, we can actually look at the different gateways that are in an establishment. We can take a look at all the sensors. We call them, to the outside world, the marketing folks did a great job. They call them smart scales. Internally, we call them sensors. So that's why, because this is not externally facing. All right, this is our support tool. So here you can see that the gateways, this particular establishment has one gateway. It actually has a MAC address, and we use that MAC address in order to identify the gateway to the establishment. We know that they're unique. We know that they cannot repeat. And so therefore, we use the last 6 digits of the MAC address in order to identify the gateway. All right? The scales also have a MAC address, but that was in-house generated. A hex digit code that we use to track them. Some of the 383C, 383F, these are older scales that have been in the field for that long. And then they've obviously had a couple of replacements. But the whole point is we can track it all the way down to the individual sensor and know when the last time that particular scale checked in. All right? One last thing you might say, well, yes, we do a device management, but what we have done, that's a shame. Okay. So what we do is to manage the gateways and then ultimately manage the devices below the gateways, the smart scales. We use the Digi device cloud. Now you might say, yeah, why didn't you invent your own? And yeah, the answer is we could have. We do some things with a product called PubNub in order to manage those POS clients that I spoke about earlier. But in the end, what we did was we negotiated a great rate with Digi in order to get device management in here. So now our support team can come into this portal and see all the gateways that we have associated with it. It's not filled out with all 250 because we just finished negotiating our deal with Digi. But as you can see, like for example, right here, we talk about McKellar. So now we can turn around and we can manage these gateways and these scales all over the world. All right? And one of the examples that I would like to show you is one here. So I don't know how many of you are from Ohio, but one of our big customers in Ohio is a place called the Winking Lizard, a well-known ownership group in the Cleveland area that has bars that have 40 taps in them. They rotate their menu every month. They do a really great job of managing their business. I hope I picked the right one. Yes. So to get into a little bit more of Python code and what we can do in terms of managing our individual devices. Here, these are the binary files that actually go in the scale. So we can push new code updates to the gateway, and then they will turn around and update the scales. Obviously, the whole update mechanism is smart enough to know that if there's an older version of the binary code on there, it's not going to work, right? We don't downgrade, although we do have the ability to override that if we want to, but obviously we don't, right? You always want the latest and greatest code out there. So these are actually text files that our gateway produces that are all filled with all of those serial numbers of the sensors. So now we can pull this file off and know all the different sensors that are connected to that gateway and whether or not they should be or there's a mistake. So back to how we use Python, all the rest. These are configuration files, and these basically tell the upgrade what we're going to do. We have 2 micros on there. One is a PIC. We can upgrade that PIC code, and we can upgrade the main processor code. Hours of operation. Basically, it's a Python file with a set of data that turns around and tells it what to do from a when to go to sleep, when to wake up perspective. And then we can also configure these scales. So if we have an establishment that has more than 80 scales in it, we can turn around and tell it, hey, why don't you switch over to this other channel in order to balance the communication. So we can do some things right here where we can manage the devices directly, all right? And we're just using the Digi device cloud in order to push these files down to the gateway. It's up to the gateway and the scale itself to then turn around, communicate, and get those updates and or those changes. So let's see. I've got a couple more things, and then we'll go after that. Oop, I got 10 minutes. Great. I'm going to finish up. Now, get me out of this. Back to this guy. All right. So what does all of this mean? All right. So I wanted to get into a little bit of the analytics, and then I'm going to open it up to questions. But part of what we collect from both the scales and the POS system are sales metrics. And so another piece of our business is to do analytics. Here we can turn around and talk about draft sales, draft versus package. Here we can get into brewery type revenues. And when I talk about brewery types, what we do is with our brewery database and our knowledge and all the rest of where the location is and where the brewery is based out of, we can turn around and tell you whether it's a national craft, a regional craft, or a local craft. If the beer is brewed within 100 miles of the establishment, we call it a local craft. If it's within the 5-state area around that particular brewery, and we do that through geofencing and geolocation and all the rest, we turn around and call you a regional brewery, right? And then if you're beyond that, you're a national brewery. We even classify our beers from an international perspective as well. All right, so there are 6 different brewery types. We can tell you the style revenue. Our beer database has over 176 different styles in it based upon the Brewers Association. We actually whittled that down into the 30 most common in order to make it more understandable for the retailer what he was getting into, rather than some sort of Belgian wheat Hefeweizen or something like that. We group them into styles that are more coherent with the language and the terminology that GMs and restaurants use. And then we can get all the way down into the product. All right, so we can tell you back to what your winners and losers are. All right, we've told people what to take off of tap and put in a package. We've told people that they could make more money if they turned around and took it out of a package and put it on tap. One of the interesting metrics is that a tap handle is only open 7% of the time. Could you imagine if the tap handle were open 8 or 9% of the time, and how much that retailer could put in his pocket? We can actually even tell you to experiment with price. So maybe you charge $4.50 for a Bud Light. Hell, you might sell more at $4.25 or $4, or you might sell more at $5. We actually did a study on Blue Moon Belgian White and found that the best price to sell a pint of Blue Moon Belgian White was $5.15. It's actually interesting what we can do with our data. All right. And then lastly, we can give you product performance. All right. So one of the things that we do with product performance is, let's say you wanted to take on a new product. Your distributor walked in and it was the Devil's Trumpet, and it was an American IPA, but you never had that product on before. What we will do is we will actually tell you across this graph how well that style does in your establishment and whether or not you should take that product on. We can also tell you the individual product. We will turn around and put that information together over the entire course of the year. If you haven't had that product on the entire year, or you haven't been with us for a year, we'll give you those metrics over that time period. You can see that Belgian White does really well in the summer months, doesn't do well in March, and doesn't do well in October. Well, that's because other seasonals come on and they take from that. So what should you do as a retailer? You might want to turn around and not order that product in these months and put those seasonals on. Or think about putting more seasonals on those taps during that time frame to increase your offering to your customers, all right, and to increase your revenue. So in the end, we give you the business intelligence from a descriptive analytics perspective. We give you data management from a prescriptive analytics perspective. And we do some machine learning and AI from a predictive analytics standpoint. We can tell you how good some products will do and how good those products may not do in your establishment. All right? And you know what time it is? It's time for a beer.
All right, thanks, Mike. Has anyone got any questions for Mike? We do have one up here.
How do you handle data ownership? Okay. So from a data ownership perspective, we have a terms and conditions and a privacy policy. When you sign up with us, your POS data is our data to use in perpetuity. However, we do anonymize it. Right now, we do not give out data outside the four walls. It is strictly for inside the four walls. Once our mantra is, over the next couple of years, as we start to gain more and more market share, and as we start to establish presence in a market, we will turn around and anonymize that data and allow you to see what's going on outside your four walls. Can bars see? Not yet, but we're getting there. What's selling, what's not? And the answer is yes, we are getting there. I'm going to add one more thing, and I'm trying not to geek out on everything and this. There's a level of 3%, 12%, and 25%. When you start to get to 3% of the data in that particular area, you start to gain some significance in terms around what it's saying to you. 12% gives you that much more and starts to solidify your position about what's going on actually. And then there's 25%, and that's ubiquity. Now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish ourselves at 3% within the market, and that will allow us to start telling the story outside the four walls. And then as we start to grow in the 12 and 25%, now 12% is going to start telling the distributor and the manufacturer what's actually working and what isn't working. And 25%, now we're starting to sell our information to advertising agencies so that they know what to push, what not to push. And so the whole idea here is that we believe that we have a really good story to tell, even further beyond than just trying to gain what we've got right now. What is the cost for a 12-tap system? I'm not going to get into ROI because we do have an ROI calculator. I don't know the math behind it right off the top of my head, but for a 12-tap system, we actually charge $60 for the scale. You buy them outright. The Wi-Fi gateways are $125, And so if you take 60 times 12, which is 720 plus 125, and you're looking at roughly somewhere around 950 bucks. And then we charge you $50 a month for monitoring. All right. If you want Optimize, which is our next level of where we collect POS information, that's another $50 a month service, no fee to get in the game.
Sounds like we got a bar owner in the room.
Okay.
I just want to know if he could make me some.
Oh, is that you?
We sell $100,000 worth of draft beer at my restaurant.
Yes.
Make another grand a year, $2 grand a year.
Oh,
Monitor
yeah.
it better.
In my opinion, I think you could probably make another 20 grand a year to 25 grand a year because you're going to be, because you're not going to waste that much product. You're going to be able to see how much is being wasted. At the same time, you'll be able to see who your winners and losers are. If you have a tap lineup that people want to come and drink, you're going to drive that traffic in the door. So that's the last piece of our message, which is what we call promote. This is a new thing that we've just rolled out within the last couple of weeks. Monitor, optimize, and promote. Promote is you can integrate your social media accounts with us and turn around and say, hey, I just tapped this 3 Floyd's gumball head, or I just tapped this 3 Floyd's zombie dust. You can tweet it out. You can post it to your Facebook page. We also give you snippets of code such that if you wanted to put that into your website, you could turn around, put that code into your website, and then as you tap those new products and things come off tap and things go off tap, it's automatically managed for you, and your customer-facing presence is automatically updated. And then lastly, you can turn one of your TVs into a digital menu. The one thing I didn't talk about digital menu is, yeah, it's got the products up there, but you can put drink specials up there. You can put food specials up there if you want to. Whatever you sell in your restaurant, you could put up there. It's amazing. I realize that a lot of people like print menus, but you'd be amazed at how much money you spend on a print menu.
3 digital TVs in there with the beer list on it, and the wine list, and the specials.
Right, and also part of our digital menu is we have a little ticker tape. So you can change those out, and you can turn around and talk about Taco Tuesday or Wine Wednesday, or come back on Saturday. We have this band. It doesn't even need to be a menu-related item. You can put anything in that stream and attract your customers to come back. What
Cool.
types of
I see you got one more question there.
in-field device updates do you perform, and how are those changes managed? We update our code in the gateways and on the scales through Device Cloud by just pushing the files down to the gateway and then letting that mechanism take over. We can even update the Python firmware in the gateways through that same mechanism. Again, why develop your own homegrown system when you can turn around and pay $1 a device a month? I mean, $12 a year to manage this guy through something that they've already taken care of for you makes the most sense. Allows your engineers to do other things.
That's really cool. All right, let's give another round of applause. Thank you very much, Mike,
Cool.
for coming out.